Hey, finance people. I wanted to spend a little bit of time going through the housing options leading into the House Hunters activity or assignment that you'll have. Um, First thing I just wanted to point out was, you know, when is it the best time to buy versus the best time to rent? Uh, Part of that is things that again you can control, like you have the income to buy a house right now, or maybe you don't have the income, so renting is the cheaper option maybe. Those are certainly things, but it's also what's going on in the economy and things that you can't control. So I'll give you an example of my sister-in-law. She bought her first house by herself when she was 21 or 22. The reason for that was she was paying like $500, $600 for rent for an apartment, but to buy a house at the time she bought it, um, her mortgage payment was $100 a month. Uh, so for her, and at that time, now that keep in mind the house was in a very sketchy part of Sioux Falls, and it was a pretty old house, not very big, but um, for what she needed it for and the size, it was perfect. And so it was cheaper for her to buy a house than to rent. Um, and that was based on just how the economy was at that time. So that'll be something, when you get to that point of having your own housing, to certainly look at and think about. Um, as far as buying, I wanted to point out the cost of buying a house, the maximum purchasing price. You will need to understand that and possibly calculate it later. Um, so just as you're house shopping, know what your salary is before taxes, so your gross salary. If you're married, combine your salaries together, um, and then when you take that times 2.5, that is the highest end that you should be looking at buying a house. Because what that basically does is, at that maximum price, it's pushing you to what the maximum would be as far as your monthly income and what you should be using for housing. So like the max end of your monthly income for housing should be 30%. And that's the mortgage, that's the utilities, that's all those things when it comes to housing. So when you take your salary times 2.5 and you get that maximum price, I mean that's pushing you to that 30% just for the mortgage. Um, so usually you should be looking for a house less than that, less than 2.5 times your income. The other thing as far as costs, when you're house shopping, you're going to need some sort of down payment. It's very unlikely a bank is going to let you buy a house without some sort of down payment. Um, so in this case, 20%, think of that as that's the minimum. Now the bank will certainly take less than a 20% down payment, but for you, it's going to cost you more money in the long run if your down payment is below 20%. And part of that is because if you didn't have enough money for a down payment, you're sort of a risk to the bank. So if it's below 20%, they tack on an extra payment. They call it this PMI or private mortgage insurance. Um, so it could be an extra 100, $200 a month you're paying, but that extra $100, $200 doesn't go towards paying off your house. It's just you are a risk because you didn't have 20%. So now you got to pay more. So if you can, if your house that you're looking at is $100,000, you need to come up with 20,000, which would be 20%. So that's certainly a lot of money, and it will take you a while, but worth it to avoid that PMI. As far as the other costs, things that we don't think about, closing costs. Um, if you're looking to buy, sometimes the seller says, well, if you purchase at this price, we'll cover all closing costs. So, sometimes you won't even have to pay that. Um, the homeowner's insurance. Again, that payment gets lumped into your mortgage payment, so you don't really think about it. It's not necessarily an extra cost. Um, so some of these, you may or may not have, but just know that they're all there as a part of your home ownership. Basically, the last thing as far as purchasing a house or renting is find something that you can afford, that you can, live within your means. It does not have to be the perfect home. No home is. Um, avoid making your home purchase an emotional purchase. You know, it's you can certainly fall in love with a home, but if it's one that you can't afford, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So find one that's within your means, that's not pushing your budget. Be rational about it. How many bedrooms are you going to need? How many bathrooms are you going to need? Things like that. So, um, if you have questions about buying or renting, let me know later.